being born and raised here in Colorado, I'm like, Phyllis, you can just come here because it's amazing in general. Again, I'm not going to belabor, Phyllis is incredible. She's been a leader in higher education and a biomedical researcher. I was particularly interested that her research is focused on issues in women's health, how hormones influence learning and memory and protect the brain against neurodegeneration. Obviously, I've got a vested interest in brains. There's so many things here, but she is an elected member of the National Academy of Medicine and the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, and I'm going to let her wow you with her knowledge. Phyllis.
Well, thank you very much. Larry asked me to give you a quick update on the progress that we've made in the Colorado longitudinal study over the last year, and it's really my pleasure to do it because, as Sarah said, I moved here specifically to take over this position. And as we were thinking about doing this move, I was reminded of the quote from Steve Jobs that said, "Your work is going to fill a large part of your life, and the only way to be truly satisfied is to do what you believe is great work. And the only way to do great work is to love what you do. And if you haven't found it yet, keep looking, don't settle. As with all matters of the heart, you will know when you found it." And I know I have found it. When we were thinking about moving, when Dick Messenger and I were thinking about moving, a friend of mine said, well, think about what you really want. Do you really want to become rich and famous? What is important to you? And, you know, I gave it a lot of thought. And what's most important to me is being able to work with great, engaged, generous people, to be working on a mission and a vision that I'm passionate about, and to be working on it in a place that I love. And so when I think about the people in Kohl's that I've had a chance to work with during this last year, it's an amazing group. And this is a composite of only some of the people that we've had a chance to work with, that we've learned from, that have been energetic, intelligent, knowledgeable, and really willing to start at the foundational elements of Kohl's. To point out just a few, Larry is certainly outsized in the role he has played. This is his idea. He thought of it long time ago, over a decade ago, before anybody else realized how important it would be to create a biobank, and let it incubate in his brain and in his heart for a long time. And I think we've really worked hard to make concrete the plans that he dreamed about. Don Elliman, who is the chancellor at CU Anschutz, and Marilyn Coors also serve on our board of directors. They have been amazing advisors. Our board meetings are not only important, but they're fun, and it's because we work together to really take the plans of the next steps into real action. And then, of course, there's Meredith, who is my closest colleague, with whom I've had a chance to work with every day, shoulder to shoulder. You could not ask for a better colleague. She is passionate and intelligent and a great student, like I am, of biobanking. So I've had a great privilege to work with amazing people. In terms of the vision of Kohl's, I showed you this slide last year. The vision remains the same, that we will create the foundation upon which unprecedented advances in health care, and health equity will be made. And in terms of the mission, that is equally as audacious and ambitious. The Kohl's will be the largest longitudinal repository of both biological specimens and also data on the social determinants of health in the world. Now, there have been several biobanks, and I should first say that in terms of a place to do this work, I feel like I've died and gone to heaven. I look out on these mountains every morning, and I never tire. It's an amazing place, but not only because of the physical geography, but because of the vibrancy, the innovation, the entrepreneurship that is just part of this community, and it extends throughout Colorado, but I know Boulder the best. It is the place where people really care about health. People really care about wanting to make the world healthier, but particularly themselves healthier. So I showed you this slide last year, and I want to remind you, because some of you were here last year, others of you weren't. There are 4 ingredients to Coles that make it truly, uniquely powerful. The first is that we will be collecting blood and urine annually, and we will be storing that blood and urine in a way that multiple molecules, including DNA, but also RNA, proteins, lipids, and metabolites, all will be stored for decades to come so that researchers can use this material. In combination, we will also be collecting intensive information, comprehensive and in-depth information on community and public and personal health information through collecting information from the electronic health records, as well as self-administered surveys and other sources. So this combination of information, both biological and sociological and community health data, is truly magical, because you can begin to start to understand the relationship between your environment and your behaviors and your biology. This is also a longitudinal study, intentionally 10 years or longer. And that means that you will be able to, you being researchers, will be able to study the changes that occur in a human being, in an individual, within that individual, because we will have multiple samples from that individual. And if that individual stays well, that's fantastic. If that individual gets sick during that period of time, again, we will have longitudinal samples and be able to develop this is the royal we, this is researchers will be able to develop devices, therapies, and diagnostics that will be able to treat the earliest stages of disease when it should be less invasive, less expensive, and more possible to cure, to prevent, to slow the progress of a disease. And finally, this is a large, large study. That is, it will include up to 1 million people, all within Colorado. And there is no other biobank in the world that has this combination of all of these elements. And because it is longitudinal, and because it is 1 million people within a relatively small geographic area, it really means that you can study community health at a level of resolution that is not possible with any other study. So what is important to recognize is that we're going to be able to study neighborhood influences on health. You may know the story of the 1850s where cholera it was figured out that cholera was actually due to impure water on one side of the street versus the other side of the street. Well, because we will have neighborhoods that are represented with high density of populations, we'll be able to understand the environment and health. The importance of the way we collect biological samples cannot be underestimated. We are going to be working with BioStorage Technologies, a company whose home base is in Indianapolis, but who has other places around the United States and around the world, unfortunately not in Colorado yet. But they are going to be working with us to plan all of the steps in terms of how much blood to collect, how to aliquot it, how to actually collect it in a way that it can be stored quickly, how to track those samples so that the privacy of the individuals are maintained, how to transport it in ways that make sure that the integrity of the samples is maintained, the processing of the samples, that is the fractionation of them, protection of all of the data, including retrieval of the samples when a researcher requests them, and our ability to send them quickly to them. Now, the IT and informatics aspects of this is also tremendous. There will be trillions of pieces of data. I think a decade ago, it would probably be impossible to do this kind of work. But today, it really is possible. The technology is there. We are going to be working with Spire Digital, which is a company in Denver that was started 20 years ago, when I don't think there were too many other companies that did digital product design. They will be, and so unfortunately you don't see what was in here. I don't know why this slide turned out this way, but we will be obviously collecting data from surveys. We will be collecting data from the biological samples. We'll be collecting data from NOAA. We will be collecting data from the Civic and from Coreo so that we have all the electronic health records. All of that has to be integrated, aggregated, integrated, organized, so that it is, the privacy is maintained, security is the highest level, and all of the data can be organized. Now, the wonderful part about Spire is that it is user-focused. That is to say, we need to work with them on making sure that everything is integrated into the cloud. But they really want to make sure that the user experience, whether it's the researchers use as a user or the participants who want to retrieve some of their information, is absolutely easy for them to do. And there are very few companies that we have learned about that really concentrate on the user experience, and we're really, really excited about working with them. In order to recruit 1 million people, it's absolutely essential that the vast majority of them will be recruited using digital methods. And so we will be using all sorts of methods, including social media and other means, to make sure that we can collect the data and participants will be recruited in a way that we can reach 1 million people. But what we also realize is that not everybody can be recruited using digital methods. And we realize that some of the people who are underrepresented usually in studies will not be able to be recruited this way, but instead will need to be done face-to-face. And so we are working on navigator programs with several different groups in order to get to rural areas and underrepresented people to make sure that they are included in this study. We want to make sure that this group is representative of Colorado in terms of our age distribution, in terms of racial distribution, and in terms of geographic distribution. So finally, funding. We are continuing to work on this area. I want to thank those of you in the audience, and there are several of you who were very kind and already gave gifts to the Colorado Longitudinal Study. We appreciate your generosity. We will continue to work with donors who become more passionate and as passionate as we are about what the goals of COLS is. We have applied for grants from foundations and also from state agencies, and we are also working with corporations. That is to say that we've started a corporate founders group that will be the first the first organizations that will work with us. SomaLogic is in the process of becoming the inaugural founder, and we're working with 4 or 5 other corporations in the biotech and big pharma area who will benefit greatly from this work. Ultimately, we'll look for federal funding, but we realize that at the present time, without enough pilot data, it's unlikely that we will be getting funding from the federal government. And finally, what are our next steps? In the next year or so, we are going to complete all of our work in terms of planning for the IT to make sure that we have the proper architecture and the proper platform. We're going to be working with BioStorage Technologies to make sure that we know exactly how much blood to collect, how to collect it, how to fractionate it, how to store it. We're going to be working with Emily Weber and her law firm to make sure that we have the consents ready, the IRB protocols ready, and the governance for the samples ready. And we're going to be working on developing ways to make sure that we can recruit and retain participants. We're planning on starting the participant recruitment part of this project in 2019. Stay tuned. The pilot will be 10,000 people, and we're really going to get our arms, roll up our sleeves and get started. So thank you very much.